Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing well out there. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great, and appreciate you stopping by the channel. Hit the notification button, subscribe, like. You guys get the deal at this point. Tobin and Leroy Show also available for you on the WQAM YouTube page. You guys can watch us every single weekday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and we'll have some fun there as well. So, Miami Dolphins OTAs in the midst of this spring turning into summer as they're getting ready for the football season. I'm not going to lie, some of the content today was pretty goosies galore that the team put out. I believe reporters are allowed out there on Wednesday, so I'm sure we'll get some, I don't know who's available as far as the coach or whatnot. I'm ignorant to that, but I'd imagine that you'll be getting some reference and talk to what's going down. Now, today, Dolphins Twitter was all abuzz because we got a very cryptic but pretty explanatory tweet from Jalen Ramsey that was just 5. ... And, didn't take, the Da Vinci Code to go in there and figure out that he was counting down the days that he'll be traded. Now, supposedly, according to Adam Schefter, the market for him and the trade market for him is apparently at a pretty good pace. He says that it's drawing more interest than people realize. There's a lot of Cowboys watch on this. Of course, a reunion with the Rams is there. There seems to be a lot of Commanders fans, Bengals fans, all looking and trying to lick their chops and add somebody to their secondary. Which, look, it's unfortunate that the Jalen Ramsey thing got to this point. That's one of those end of tenure stories I'm definitely looking forward to see what is the dirt, because the Dolphins are kings of that. Like, when a player leaves disgruntled, you're gonna get the dirt, and while it's interesting because some of the stuff that's come out has been between, it went from pay cut to no, he just has a bad relationship with the head coach, which has been very, very confounding. That the Dolphins are trying to put Mike McDaniel in a position where there's fewer big personalities that he has to deal with on his team, which you would have thought would have been a strength of his, because a lot of these guys came here and I think they saw a guy who they liked was a little different, but they also were older. Maybe something like this was going to help them being longer in the tooth. But the Dolphins chemistry has basically been dragged through the mud, and I thought it was very noticeable today. During the OTAs, they tweeted out phase 2, connection, consistency, chemistry. That's 3 C's. Connection, consistency, and chemistry. And I feel like out of all of that stuff, the chemistry is definitely the thing where it's like, oh, they need to get that right if they're the Miami Dolphins. And it said, phase 2, connection, a relationship in which a person, thing, or idea is linked or associated with something else. So they're trying to get everything together. The consistency, the achievement of a level of performance that does not vary greatly in quality over time. Well, this Miami Dolphins team is over time consistently inconsistent, and especially seems to sputter out towards the end of the year when the weather gets a little bit diabolical for them and their speedy vroom vroom doesn't seem to work anymore. So that's definitely a phase they do have to get right as well. Chemistry, they they started with a photo or a video of Patrick Paul, who looks massive, by the way. He's a giant. With Chop Robinson, and it said chemistry, the complex, emotional, or psychological interaction between two people. And that to me was like the interesting C, because it's like, oh, everybody was talking about the Dolphins' chemistry in their locker room being pretty rotten last year. So for them to put this emphasis, and we've heard a little bit about this, about guys being on time, the work, the attendance, all that stuff being where it needs to be. But that was certainly an interesting one. That was like, oh, they're putting this all out the same day that Jalen Ramsey's counting down the days. He can't wait to get off the Miami Dolphins. Pretty wild. The orange jerseys today went to Jalen Phillips and Ethan Bonner. And Ethan Bonner, man, hey, they took a shot at you, dude, because, the man who has been the training camp wonder of the Miami Dolphins for the last few years Well, he doesn't have a lot of believers. The publication known as ESPN, they are also known as the worldwide leader in sports. They had a thing today about 100 days before the NFL, a lot of things they wanted to chime in on. And it said, this is from Ben Solek, who I don't read a lot of his stuff, but this is what he had to say. Under his terms, 14 intrusive thoughts. He said, if the Dolphins trade Jalen Ramsey, their starting secondary will be Storm Duck and Cam Smith at outside corner, with Kader Kohu in the nickel and Ashton Davis and Ifatu Melifonwu at safety. I'm sorry to say that's an early candidate for worst position group in the league. And it's kind of something we knew. Like, the Dolphins were going to go into this year. They were going to have something that was going to be amiss. The one thing I would say with it, Leroy and I have talked about this a lot. I'm kind of leaning on his expertise here. He swears if your front seven is right, you're going to be in a place where you'll be able to be palatable with your secondary. The other thing is, no mention of Ethan Bonner in there. Storm Duck did surprise a lot of people last year. Can he take that big step forward? I'm not sure. Cam Smith is obviously, one that everybody is curious about because he was a high draft pick. He was the first pick in a draft for the Miami Dolphins. And, Chris Greer's already basically said we can't hold his hand anymore, and brought that up by himself. Wasn't even asked about him. That he can't sit here and spoon feed it to him. So I think that was a very... It's a very noticeable thing that the Dolphins are going to have to deal with. Everybody knows it, but you probably knew going into this draft you weren't going to be able to address everything. They're going to need to find another gem somewhere that they weren't expecting, which, look, to be fair to them, they stink at drafting cornerbacks. Finding cornerbacks and DBs that nobody thought of, they seem to be kind of good. I remember there was a battle for it at the end of last year. So there's hope for that you do. If there's anything you can trust, they can't pick up offensive linemen to save their life, but that they seem to have something there in recognizing it. The other thing is, the hope is, if there really is this robust market for Jalen Ramsey, all right, well, can they actually leverage that into something, or are they going to just bend to the whim of sending Jalen Ramsey where he goes? Will they actually pull the trigger on sending him where they can get the best offer? Can they get a third-round pick for him? Can they? Now, I'm expecting it probably to be fourth, but could they surprise? Could they come out of it with a wash? That would be, a bit of a win, and you could go into this saying, all right, you know what, Chris Greer, I know you're on thin ice, but it kind of feels like you bailed yourself out of that position pretty strongly. You knew you had to wait until June for it, but I think you're doing okay now, and you're putting yourself in a pretty good position. But we'll see. I'm not counting that just yet. I'm not ready to go out there and say that, he's nailed all things. They also said, by the way, in this ESPN piece, they said 11 jobs with question marks. He says, I believe two things very strongly. First, McDaniel's work building an offense around QB Tua Tagovailoa is some of the best offensive scheming in the league. Second, his offense fades against truly great defenses in cold weather on the road. In short, play football. The Dolphins need a strong season from their defense, which could be extremely inexperienced and shaky following the Jalen Ramsey trade to make a postseason push. Otherwise, it'll be 4 seasons without a playoff victory under Mike McDaniel, and that's tough to defend. Yeah, that's totally. To be honest, from Ben, or if he just goes by Benjamin, it is tough to defend, especially a couple years back. I don't know if this will necessarily be the best team that Mike McDaniel has had in his tenure, but I will say this. I think that other than getting Tua back to his potential, which is a big one, and if they have Tua available, they should be at least in some decent spot to have a good record and have a pretty decent chance of getting double-digit wins. But the question is always going to be, when they really have to step up in weight class, can they do anything about it? Because that answer has been a definitive no. And if you can have a coach who can get these guys over a level of expectation anymore, then what do you have? Like, you've given him everything at that point. You've given him the big stars, but then you've had to take away the big stars because he couldn't manage the big stars. And, he fixed the quarterback, but maybe got every drop out of him that he could, especially from a durability standpoint. So will it be definite that if Mike McDaniel doesn't want to play off game, he'll be fired? I don't know. I honestly think that his ground is going to be the shakiest earliest. Like, I think if the Dolphins get off to a rough bum start, then okay. Then the noise is going to be very loud around him. But if they get off to a good start and it goes the way that it has past years, yeah, they could possibly come around and being like, we want to go in another direction. And, Stephen Ross would be like, Belichick, Jordan Hudson, come on down. That's going to be how it ends, doesn't it?